Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Sam, and today I wanted to share my August reading wrap up with you. Now that we are in September and it's a new reading month, let's look back and see what I read in August and just chat about some books. So in August, I read a total of 7 books, which is okay. It's a little low for me, and I was really excited for the books that I was supposed to be reading in August and was just like really in the reading mood, and I'm not really sure what happened. Let's just talk about them. I had mostly library and KU books this month. I only had 2 books that I owned. So let's just jump in. The first book that I read was The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. I took this out from my library and rated this 2 stars. Everyone was talking about the second season of the show coming out on Netflix recently, and I have never read the series before, so I really wanted to read it before summer was over. So I took the first one out from my library. I was so excited to read it, and it just kind of flopped for me. I feel like this happens a lot with me for the book talk hyped books. I just never seem to vibe with them. This one particularly, it was kind of the writing style that really bothered me. The chapters were very short, which I appreciate, although sometimes it felt like they were short just for the sake of being short, and it felt a little bit choppy. This was also a dual timeline, sort of, or like we had flashbacks, and the flashbacks weren't linear, which I understand why they weren't, because the flashbacks were related to what was currently happening in like the current plot line to give us backstory. But it was very hard to follow jumping into the story for the first time and trying to piece together, okay, this happened at this point and this happened at this point. My other issue with this book was Belly. And first of all, I could not get past her nickname. Like, what was that? Why? Like, of all the nicknames that you can make from Isabella, which they only mention her, like, real name once. Anyway, she continually said that she's not a child anymore and she's grown up and she's this mature teenager. And then in the next second, she has a temper tantrum and freaks out that she's not included in something, or that she's not being treated like with the adult about. I don't know. This book just wasn't for me. I I I do think that it would have been a book that I enjoyed if I was reading it at the same age. So if I was still in high school, or if I was still in like grade 8 or something, I think I would have really enjoyed this book a lot more. But because I am 25, I felt like everything was just a little juvenile. So that was the first book. Starting the month off really great. The second book I read was on my Kindle. It was Crimes of Cupidity by Raven Kennedy. I rated this book 3 stars. Once I finished it, I discovered that I think this is the last book in the like official series. And then the next book is a novella, and the last book is like a spin-off, like a book following one of the side characters. So I finished the main plot of the book or of the series, and I really enjoy this one. Like, I had a great time. I really love this world. I think it's a lot of fun. The cupidity, or the Cupid roles. I honestly couldn't tell you why I rated it 3 stars. I think it was just kind of like, yeah, this was very enjoyable. I had a good time, but like, wasn't anything great. I liked the way that it concluded. I love the Genfins. I haven't figured out how to pronounce them. Overall, I think it was like a fun time. I would recommend this series. I like Raven Kennedy's writing. Our Cupid, ML, has definitely grown up and kind of come out of her juvenile tendencies, like more or less. This one was definitely spicy. If you haven't heard of this series before, it's about ML, who is a Cupid and isn't the best Cupid, doesn't really care about anything. And she is banished to work in the Fae realms and gets stuck on a Genfin island and sort of has to help them maneuver and deal with this evil prince. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it and yeah, would recommend. I'm excited to read the next book, especially knowing that I'm very, very close to the end of this series. I would love to take it off very soon. Okay, the next book that I read was Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. This is book 6 in the Throne of Glass series. As you all probably already know, I'm buddy reading this with my friend Emily from Emily and Max. I'll leave her link down below. This book, wow, so much happened in this book. This entire book felt like the last 100 pages of every Sarah J. Maas novel. It was just wild. I love all the characters that we're following. There was so much happening. And this book, you really saw that Sarah really just leaves these teeny tiny breadcrumbs that all come together at the end. Like, how? How does she do this? And how do I miss everything that she's like leaving little crumbs for? Every time I finish a book in this series, I want to start it all over again. This was a 6-star book for me. Yeah, wow, I am unwell. Obviously, I'm not going to go really into what this book is about at all, but it's like fantasy, assassins, politics, like mental health, found family, like every trope that I love is in the series. If you've read ACOTAR and you haven't read Throne of Glass is better. I never thought I would be saying that, but like this series lives rent-free in my head, and I'm terrified for how it ends. I don't know what's coming. I just know it's going to be painful. So, also, if you haven't read A Throne of Glass, read The Assassin's Blade first. You're welcome. Okay, moving on. The next book that I read was Children of Fallen Gods by Carissa Broadbent. This is the second book in the Daughter of No Worlds. That's not what it's called. This is the second book in the Lost Hearts trilogy. I think the series is called The War of Lost Hearts. I can never remember what it is, but it's the second book to Daughter of No Worlds. I tried to start this at the very beginning of August and I just couldn't get into it. This was the last book that I had remaining to read on my July TBR, and this took me a long time to get through. This was 650 pages, I believe. I ended up rating it 3 stars. I was really confused about our third POV for about half of the book and was really confused about sort of the entire plot and what was happening. Granted, it has been a couple months since I read the first book and I considered rereading it, but I didn't want to set aside that time. So I just jumped in, hoping that I would remember everything. And I remembered the characters and I remembered sort of what they went through and what they were doing. But this one just took us on a turn. I rated this one 3 stars if I haven't mentioned that already. So the first half of the book was really feeling like a 2-star for me. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who this third character was. And once we got past the halfway point, it really started to pick up with the plot of what was going on. And then in the last 150 pages, it was plot twist after plot twist, reveal after reveal. And there was just a lot of information. And then I was confused again. And then got some more information. And I think I know what's going on. So that last little bit definitely bumped it up for me, but this was definitely not my favorite book and it didn't feel like the same as the first book. And the romance in this one was definitely not as great in my opinion. Definitely them building their connection in the first book was a lot more impactful for me. Basically, this series is about a girl, Tasana, who is a slave and has some magic powers, and she ends up becoming free and running to the towers to learn magic and hone her skills to be able to go back and free all of her friends. And there's kind of this impending war coming at the same time. And so we're just kind of following that story. I'm interested to see how the series ends, but the next book's over 700 pages. And after this book, I'm not ready to jump into that yet, but I know that I'm going to have to jump into it sooner than later so I don't forget everything again. The next book that I read was this It's Not Summer Without You by Jenny Han. This is book 2 in the Summer I Turned Pretty series. This one I ended up rating 3 stars. I definitely liked it more than the first. Again, I took this out from my library, and the only copy that my library had was an ebook version, and in Canada we can't get library ebooks onto our Kindle. If that can come up here, that would be great. So I had to read this on my phone, and I read about half of it at my boyfriend's brother's football game, and I finished the rest of it the next day. And boy, was that a bad idea. I think I strained my eye doing that, especially reading it on my phone. So I had to take a couple days off from reading after this book. So that was super fun. Definitely put a wrench in my reading plans. But anyway, about this book. So this follows about a year after the first book, or at least a couple months after the first book. And again is sort of it has a non-linear flashback timeline again, but this one worked a lot better, and maybe because I was expecting it, it just flowed a lot better. Belly seemed to be less annoying, or at least her annoying tendencies made sense with what she was dealing with. I think it did a good job of that. I liked the plot line of the story. It definitely does, it was not like summary at all. It honestly, I felt like we were in the middle of like fall or winter, which was definitely not. Like it was set in July, but it just didn't feel summery to me. Um, so yeah, it was just kind of one of those books that was like good, fine, but nothing revolutionary. So 3 stars is pretty standard rating for me. It was fine. The next book that I read was Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. This again is the next book in the Throne of Glass series that I'm buddy reading with my friend Emily. This was a 5-star read for me. I was really concerned with how this book was going to go because the number of POVs that we have in this book compared to the number of POVs that we have in this book, there are very few, and we are following not the best characters. These 2 books also take place at the same time, so there is a tandem read that you can do with these books. But it was much too complicated to try and do for my first read, especially as a buddy read. And I might attempt the tandem on reread. But anyway, I cannot believe how much I enjoyed this book. I was smiling, giddy, kicking my feet at this book and at one character's plotline specifically. Like, wow. There was a lot of important information that we learn about this book, and there's like healing and this like self-discovery in this book that is so impactful. Yeah, I am very surprised by how much I like this one. This one was good. This one holds like I'm just like taking these characters and tucking them into a little special corner of my heart. I love the series. The series is like changing my life. And then the last book that I read in August was The Martian by Andy Weir. I read Project Hail Mary in July, I believe, and absolutely loved it. Couldn't believe how much of like a fan I was of that sci-fi. And I decided to pick up The Martian, which is Andy Weir's debut novel. I watched the movie when it came out like a number of years ago and wasn't really a fan because I think it came out very close to when Interstellar came out, and I watched that first, and that was like, wow. So I guess it's just one too many space movies for me. But this was really good. I rated it 4 stars. I loved our main character, Mark Watney's like inner monologue and his like reaction to things. I felt like very connected to that, and like I would have had very similar reactions, just like very sarcastic, like kind of like, yeah, it was just like really funny. I will say the thing, like the issue that I have with, I guess, Andy Weir's books specifically, I can't say this on like all sci-fi books because these are like the only 2 that I've read. The scientific descriptions and like the space tech descriptions I just really couldn't picture. So I just kind of like went, oh yeah, okay, sure. That's what the MIB looks like. I actually started watching the movie yesterday to just kind of see how similar it was, and like the plot is very similar. Like there's lines that like key lines that I remember. I'm like, that's literally word for word. But the space tech, obviously it's NASA, and like the space tech is going to be like high tech or whatever, but it's not. It's not how I pictured it. Like I pictured the MAV, however you want to pronounce it, as like a glorified pop-up camping tent, which is not what it is. But essentially, the plot of this book is Mark Watney is part of a space mission with his crew, and something happens, and he ends up on Mars by himself for a time, and he has to try and figure out how he's going to get off. It was just fun. It was a good time, and I really enjoyed it. And that's all the books I read this month. I feel like this wasn't like the best wrap up. Obviously, I read like 7 books, which is a decent amount of books for a month, but like not very like excited about any of them. They were all kind of like meh, except for these. Well, that's everything. I hope you all had a better reading month than I did. Share with me down below what your favorite book that you read was in August. I would love to chat with you. With that being said, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.